appreciate everyone's flexibility in staying in the room and having a great conversation with your neighbor, and appreciate you bearing with a small technical snafu. I am just here to sort of make this transition, and I know that at conferences and convenings, you can sort of get numbed by the level of thanking other people and the level of gratitude. But I can't let this moment pass without thanking the McKnight Foundation for their support of the summit. They were one of the very first supporters of this gathering and this conversation. They were also the very first supporter of our rural program office in Fergus Falls and a longtime supporter and partner and collaborator to Springboard, and I know to many of you in the room. But beyond that incredible, and it is incredible, institutional support that we have from the McKnight Foundation, Vicki Benson, who is the program director at McKnight, there's no person I can think of who is more important to the infrastructure and the support system and the humble, generous Minnesota way that she connects resources and people and conversations. She is such an important person to me, an important collaborator, a generous soul, and there's no one I know who loves artists more than Vicki Benson.
Thank you, Laura. People who know me know that I'm crying right now because that's how I take things in. So this wonderful summit has reminded me of how the importance of our stories and our stories that connect us to land and to each other. And the McKnight Foundation was started by people, William and Maud McKnight, and they have deep stories. It was 60 years ago, over 60 years ago, that they decided they were going to take their wealth and share it. And McKnight supports all sorts of, thank you, Laura. It wasn't Laura. Thank you, whoever you are. I can't see with the... Thank you. So the McKnight Foundation is firmly planted in Minnesota and has supported all sorts of issues and aspects of Minnesota over its more than 60 years, including trying to clean the air, work on our beloved Mississippi River, and support education. And the arts has always been there. And speaking of concentric circles that came up in the previous session, our program at the center, our concentric circle starts with working artists. Working artists are the core of the cultural sector in Minnesota, and McKnight believes that and puts resources behind it. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to that. So yesterday, Laura Youngbird reminded us of the land that we're on, and that is a great reminder, and we should always remember that the Dakota people were here. Carlton Turner, it was really great to hear him tell his story about putting his credentials aside and having someone remind him who his grandfather was and that he stood on his grandfather's shoulders. And I know Carlton as a powerful truth teller, so I can only imagine Carlton's grandfather. In fact, I had fun yesterday imagining him. And then, it reminded me of my own story. And yesterday I had a great chance to talk with an old buddy, Melinda Childs, who has moved to Rhinelander, and so I haven't talked with her much. And I was reminded that her auntie, Sandra Pisani, who was a psychiatric nurse, didn't work in the arts, was my first professional mentor when I was 20 years old, and Sandra taught me how to listen to people. So our stories are so important. Yesterday, Eric Takashita and I, we joked that he was going to come up here and say that he was Vicki Benson, and then I was going to say that I'm Eric Takashita from the Bush Foundation. Well, that would be ludicrous, but we talked about it anyway. But what I admire about Eric is he often introduces himself by reminding himself and people of who are his grandparents, his parents. He's the father to his daughters, etc. And I believe that if we make more spaces to tell our own stories, as we have done here, and listen, so we got some training on listening, listen to other people's stories, then I believe we'll just break that divide. And I also believe it'll help us understand the more that the stories are told, the more that we educate ourselves on others people's stories. We'll also understand when it is not our story to tell. And cultural appropriation, as we all know, is rampant. There are folks from the dominating culture who often use Native ceremonial regalia and stories and design to make profit for their own. And this is just plain wrong. So in the spirit of Maxine Adams this morning saying we should, do something, I say if you see something, say something. So what I'm going to do, I was telling Sarah Lovin, I was in H&M the other day and saw mass-produced Dreamcatcher earrings. I'm going to write H&M. That's not their story to tell. And if it is, where's the artist's name? So along those lines, you don't know, you're just really in for a very special time here. We have one of the leaders in the country, perhaps internationally, of a person who has dedicated her career to uplifting the aspects of cultural appropriation that are just plain wrong. And through her company, Beyond Buckskin, she supports Native artists, Native designers, and then calls out when cultural appropriation is taking place, and in a very, very prominent way. So I highly esteem this woman, and please help me to welcome Dr. Jessica Metcalfe.
Okay, let's get situated here. Thank you so much for having me. It is such a huge honor to be here. It's amazing. Thank you guys for sticking around. And I literally can't see you guys because of the light. But this morning, I want to share with you some stories from my journey with Beyond Buckskin. I want to share why I launched this website and business and how I was able to grow it, and talk a little bit about our challenges and successes, and then offer up some tips and lessons learned to you guys. So back in 2009, I was in the mix of writing my doctoral dissertation on Native designers of high fashion. Now, when you're in academia, you quickly realize that the audience for your research and writing is very limited and very small. And a lot of times this is just one person, and that's your professor. This really bothered me because I was interviewing these designers, and they were sharing their personal stories of their triumphs, of of their designs. They were sharing this with me, and they were handing over their collections of photographs or brochures from past events. And they were doing this with an idea that I was going to do something with this information that they were giving me. And I was building an archive, and I was also writing my dissertation, but I felt like I wasn't doing enough. And so back then, and still to this day, the quickest, easiest, cheapest way to get your words out there is by launching a blog. And so that's what I did. And this is what it looked like back in the day. It was very dark. And this is my first blog post. It's called The Path from There to Here and Into the Future, where I outline my hopes and dreams for this new website and space. And I must say that my hopes and dreams have been surpassed many times over. There's absolutely no way that I could have predicted that with the push of the publish button, it would lead to a lifelong career and put me here, which is absolutely extraordinary. But the goal of Beyond Buckskin was very basic, and that was to get my research out to more people. And so what I do with these two different spaces, with this space, is there are 3 types of blog posts that I put up on here, and this is what the website looks to this day. I keep it updated. I'll do designer profiles or interviews with contemporary Native designers. I'll also highlight some traditional or historical objects that were made in the past, or I'll write critiques of mainstream fashion industry's misappropriation of Native American cultures. And through the designer profiles, I'll either interview the designer or write up an overview of their work. And in this way, you get to see the individuality, creativity that exists in contemporary Native design. This is a cocktail dress by Consuelo Pascual, who is Mayan and Navajo. And her ancestors were knowledgeable observers of the sky world. And she takes this ancient inspiration point and throws it into the future. Her collections are influenced by the blackness of outer space, the glimmer of stars, and the architecture of a fluid spaceship that she incorporates into high-end couture. To Patricia Michaels, who is Taos Pueblo and is known for her participation and successes on the hit reality TV series Project Runway, she says that she starts each garment like a blank canvas. And indeed, most of her designs begin with a plain white or black fabric that she hand paints and manipulates and then transforms into 3-dimensional wearable sculptures. Now, about the relationship of her clothing to stories, she stated, quote, "Each garment that I make, the fabric and the cut of the garment tells a story. Some people do it through pottery or painting or jewelry. For me, I just thought, well, somebody can wear it. They can feel these stories on their skin," end quote. To Alano Adzurdza, who is Tahltan, based out of Vancouver, and he works in a variety of media, including wood sculpture, painting, and jewelry, and he takes his 2-dimensional paintings, blows them up, zooms in on them, and then transfers the designs to fabric that wraps around the body. And his work is distinctively bold and translates perfectly to streetwear. To Jared Yazzie, who is a Navajo graphic artist and streetwear designer based out of Arizona. Much of his work packs a political punch by advocating to protect the earth and her resources, to celebrate the power of Native women, or to ask people to rethink popular perspectives on history. Native Americans are the ones who discovered Columbus, not the other way around. Now, these artists aren't just coming out of nowhere. They are continuing a legacy. And I like the work of Jamie Akuma, who is Luiseño and Shoshone-Bannock, to highlight this continuance. For her latest fashion designs, Akuma has been digitally printing her original beadwork designs, which are inspired by traditional plateau beadwork, which you can see on the left, to fabric for dresses, leggings, and scarves. Here she serves as a bridge from the well-known traditional adornment of the past to the fashion world of the present. Now, importantly, these designers provide a pathway for future generations. Now, for thousands of years, humans have engaged in the creative practice of decorating the body, from piercings to tattoos to jewelry, hairstyles, and embellished Garments, the act of fashioning the self goes beyond the utilitarian and into the realm of symbolic significance. This is one of my favorite examples. This is a Plains men's warrior shirt from the 1800s. And I like this example because it asks us to think of warriors as not only protectors of the community, but also as artists and historians, because they would record their feats in battle as symbols or drawings on their clothing. And those symbols were mnemonic devices that reminded them of specific stories. Those stories would go on to be family histories, community stories, but also stories of our nation. On this shirt, you see there's two sides. On the left side, that is how many enemies this shirt wearer took in battle in protecting their community. They are drawn with just one leg and one little foot kicking out, because this is to represent that this person will no longer walk on this earth. This person is dead. On the right side, there are these horizontal lines with inverted triangles. This represents how many times this shirt wearer carried a pipe into battle. Now, it might sound weird to carry a pipe into battle, but pipe is how we smoke the sacred tobacco. It's how we communicate with the sacred world. So a pipe carrier was in charge of the sacred safety of the war party. They were the first to go out into battle, and a lot of times they carried no weapons at all. And they were the last to retreat and to ensure the safe return of the entire party. Now, so somebody who has a shirt with this many counted images on it is somebody who is truly blessed and gifted and brave, and is somebody who should be a leader of the community and a role model for the youth. Now, I also find myself talking a lot about the Native American headdress, and this is due to pop culture's current intense interest in this beautiful object. Several Native nations still use the sacred headdress in ceremonies and as an important symbol of leadership. One cannot simply wear a headdress because you want to. You have to earn the right to wear one of these through acts of bravery, selflessness, and leadership. Single eagle feathers are gifted to individuals who have accomplished great deeds, because eagle is seen as an important intermediary between the humans here and the Great Spirit or Creator. So when you have done something of note for your community, you are gifted with the feathers of this important bird. People can also gift their feathers to someone who they identify as a great leader. And the feathers of many people can be combined to create a headdress that will be presented to that person as a symbol of support. It is also a sign of that chosen leader's obligation to always put the community first in decision making. So this is Sitting Bull, and he's a significant Lakota chief of the late 1800s and a current symbol of resistance. And he was gifted his war bonnet in this manner. His floor-length headdress was comprised of feathers that were earned and owned by others who knew he would fight for the betterment of the tribe and would continually work for the symbolic value of the feathers. And through the gifting of the feathered headpiece, Sitting Bull was thus elected or chosen as the leader of the community. Now, I would love to just talk about what's happening with contemporary Native fashion design and highlight some really cool traditional pieces, but I can't, because stuff like this keeps popping up, and we need to be talking about it, and we need to be critiquing it. On the left side, you have Jeremy Scott's collection for Adidas, in which he essentially ripped off a well-known totem pole design made by a well-respected totem pole carver of the Northwest Coast and gave him no credit at all. On the top right, you have Oprah Winfrey with Ralph Lauren posing in front of his teepee. And this was during her final season, where she was highlighting some of her favorite people, and that included Ralph Lauren, and she called him the epitome of the American dream. Now, this is extremely problematic because he has built his career off of selling the Native. So when you call him the epitome of the American dream, what does that do for Native people? It not only erases us from that narrative, but it actually turns us into commodities that must be sold and consumed by others in the pursuit of the American dream. Now, and these are all formal critiques that are right on the website, and you can read them. I do not expect people to agree with what I say. Instead, I just want to be able to put my perspective out there because it is completely different than what normal people think about Ralph Lauren. Now, on the bottom right, I also do these fun or lighthearted posts, or I think they're funny. This one was 20 signs you're a Native American-inspired hot mess. Now, this is at the height of the Native trend, where people were putting feathers, like, literally on everything. And this is one... This is one of the participants at Katy Perry's birthday party, which had a Cowboys and Indians theme. And not only did she show up with a full headdress with these kind of rodent skulls across her forehead, but also a nude bodysuit with some strategically placed crotch feathers. I don't know if you guys see them there. But so number 13 was, just say no to crotch feathers, because that would be a sign that you're at hot mess status. And interestingly, it's these funny posts that are meant to be like poking fun at stuff that garners the most backlash from my readers. People get really mad at me for advising them against doing this. But I'm just trying to help you out. Just do what you got to do, though. So in 2011, something very interesting happened, and that is that Urban Outfitters got caught. They had labeled over 24 of their products as Navajo. So they were selling the Navajo flask, the Navajo sock, the Navajo panty. Now, not only did these items have nothing to do with Navajo people, but the Navajo Nation has actually trademarked their name. And any unauthorized use of the word Navajo is just violation of trademark law. So the Navajo Nation team of lawyers stepped forward and sent a cease and desist letter. But the Urban Outfitters, hold on. We need to be doing more of this, but the Urban Outfitters team of lawyers actively fought the tribe's claims. They were arguing that Navajo is not a nation. It is not a people. Instead, it is a generic term used to describe a style or design. Oh, it gets worse. I'm like, just hold on. The company wanted the judge to not only determine that no rights were infringed, but they also wanted the judge to cancel all of the tribe's federal trademark registrations that covered the word Navajo. Now, in order for a trademark to be deemed sufficiently famous in a legal sense, it must be, quote, widely recognized by the general consuming public of the United States, end quote, which interestingly, the judge held was not the case for the Navajo Nation. So the largest tribe in the United States could not prove that it was famous enough. So how are we supposed to protect our names, our practices, and our legacies if this is just a mere popularity contest? We are the minorities of the minorities, which I might add is a result of deliberate and systematic genocidal attacks. And I don't think that we should be further punished nor continue to have our identities whittled away by large companies just because our tribes are not household recognizable brands. We will never win if that's the case. And there's more at stake than just a mere court case victory, and FIT fashion law professor Guillermo Jimenez brings up some major points. And they are that, number one, the counterfeiting of native arts, as well as the knockoff versions sold by brands like Urban Outfitters and H&M and Forever 21, has actually driven down the prices of authentic work. And this is at the expense of Native American artists. Number two, stereotypes have become commonplace in fashion, and this is at the expense of Native fashion designers. Number three, existing laws are insufficient for the protection of Indigenous cultural intellectual property rights, and this is at the expense of Indigenous cultural heritages. And lastly, number four, we really need to push for corporate social responsibility and to strike up genuine partnerships and collaborations between these big brands and companies and Native communities and artists. Now, the latest update is that in the fall of 2016, the two parties actually reached a settlement agreement outside of court, and the details are confidential. But the press release stated that the parties entered into a supply and license agreement and plan to collaborate on authentic American Indian jewelry in coming years. Sounds great, right? The Navajo Nation president said, quote, "The tribe expects companies to seek permission when considering using the Navajo name, design, or motifs," end quote. And the General Counsel for Urban Outfitters said that the company, quote, "has long been inspired by the style of Navajo and other American Indian artists and looks forward to the opportunity to work with them on future collaborations," end quote. We will see about that. I'm not holding my breath. Urban Outfitters is a terrible company. They do not care who they piss off, and they are notorious for constantly, consistently ripping off artists. So I joined in the chorus of journalists and bloggers who were talking about this topic. You know, do these companies have any obligation, any social responsibility? What do we do? And so I was asking my readers to boycott Urban Outfitters, but also to buy from actual Native American artists. If you like the Native American trend or the Navajo style, buy from actual Native artists. They exist, they're out there, they're really cool. But my readers said, that's a great idea, but how? Where? Because at this time in 2011, there wasn't a space to easily access Native-made fashion items. You would have to go to a powwow or to a reservation or to Santa Fe, and a lot of people don't have the resources to do that. So through my research and work with my dissertation and with the blog, I had established a really great rapport with many Native designers. And I reached out to them in the month of March of 2012 and said, hey, I have this idea to launch an online boutique space where we spotlight Native American fashion only. And 11 responded back, yes, that sounds like a great idea. So we worked together. I have to tell you that I was living in Phoenix at the time, teaching at Arizona State University, and I was on the path to being a professor. But that quickly went south. I got to see the dirty side of academia, and I didn't like it, and I wanted out. I was also going into debt, being a professor, and I thought, well, why don't I just go into debt doing something I want to do and what I love? So I had no money, but when you have no money but you have an idea, you'll find a way to make it work. And so I had $100, and that went to building the website, and I worked with the initial 11 designers on doing drop shipping. So that way I didn't have to buy any inventory up front, and actually they couldn't afford to sell it at wholesale price at that time either. So an order would come through Beyond Buckskin, I would forward that on to the artist would fill the order and ship it directly to the customer, and then Beyond Buckskin would retain a small portion of the sales that we did through our site, and then I just pumped that money back into the business to grow it to where it is now. But the goals of the boutique were very simple, basic. It was to put this idea forward of telling people to, buy native-made, not native knockoffs, and to push native fashion forward by economically supporting it and creating a platform. Like, this is all native-made fashion stuff. And the response to what we were doing has been overwhelmingly positive. We've had what we're doing covered by CNN, NBC, ABC, CTV, Elle Canada, APTN, Martha Stewart. Cowboys and Indians magazine is a huge supporter of what we're doing. We've had collaborations with Paul Frank Industries. We've had events in California, New York, Arizona, New Mexico, North Dakota. And recently I was asked to be a consultant and a guest author for the exhibit Native Fashion Now that was organized by the Peabody Essex Museum, and it started there in Salem, Massachusetts. It went to Tulsa, Oklahoma, then to Portland, Oregon, and it is now currently in New York at the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian. If you're in New York before September, go check it out. It is amazing. It features contemporary Native fashion by over 70 artists and designers. It's so cool. But we have customers from all over the world. The majority of them are based out of the US and Canada, but we also ship to Sweden, Switzerland, something's going on in Finland, I'm shipping a lot there, Australia, Norway, the UK, and more. So it's big. And like I said, I started with only 11 artists, but I work with over 40 artists now, and that continues to grow, which I'm so excited about, and they do some really extraordinary stuff. But I wanted to show you guys this image because this is Martin Sensmeyer. He's a Native American actor, and he's wearing porcupine quill work. Porcupine quill work is an art form that is unique to Native North America. You will not find it anywhere else in the world. It is a practice that predates contact, it predates the introduction of glass seed beads, and it is still practiced to this day. We sell quill work earrings and bracelets, and every time somebody buys a pair of earrings or a bracelet, they are actively supporting the continuance of this ancient, beautiful artistic practice, and I think that that is so cool. Now, this is our latest photo campaign. Now, I launched the online boutique in 2015, so we just celebrated our 5-year anniversary last month, which I'm so excited about. But we also celebrated our 1-year anniversary of our retail store. So I was operating this online store through my house, and it was taking over my home, and I had to get it out of my house. And so it was actually very difficult to find retail space to rent on the res. I know, it's shocking. But we finally found a space, and it was an old bank. So we have a couple of vaults. You would think that we would keep the super expensive beadwork in the vaults, but we end up keeping like the shipping materials and stuff in there. I don't know why. But, and we have 3 employees who are absolutely amazing. Their ages 16, 18, and 20. They're young. They are awesome. And I asked them to do a photo shoot. We just had gotten a bunch of stuff in. This was like around 10 days ago, so it's super recent. And I'm like, it needs to be photographed, just take it, just go. And so our in-house photographer is Dylan Martin, and these are all tribal members. He is 16, and we're constantly getting new products in, and so he's there to do all of the product photography. He's now doing the photo shoot model photography, and then we're gonna segue him into doing video lookbooks as well, because that's where his passion is. He loves photography and film. And we sent them out, and this is what they came back with, which is so cool. So these are of Kelly Henry, who's also our employee. She's 20. She's an amazing beadwork artist, and she is so great with customers. Whenever I'm stuck in the corner doing paperwork, she's so great with them, and she is our model on this one. And the third employee, Tyra Jerome, just graduated from high school last week, and she plans to attend the local tribal community college in the fall, and she is also an amazing beadwork artist, and she assisted with this photo shoot. Kelly is wearing these ribbon skirts by local artists Margaret Judy Kakanawash Azure, and accessories by Lynn LaRock, and actually the earrings that she's wearing, that Kelly's wearing, she made them, and she made them specifically as a Beyond Buckskin product, so you can go to the site and buy those. We have so many talented artists on the reservation, and it is an absolute honor to get to work with them to get their work out to more people. And literally every purchase allows an artist to continue their craft and to share their creativity and cultural practices with the world. Now, the ribbon skirts are based on older skirts made out of hide that were decorated with pigment, and with the introduction of European trade goods, calico fabric and silk ribbons were also used to carry on meanings and teachings. So the silhouette of the skirt itself comes from a sacred place, and it follows the outline of a mikiwap or teepee. And the bottom of the skirts, as you can see in this picture, would touch the earth's medicine. And as the woman would walk while wearing her skirt, Mother Earth would always know who it was that was making their presence felt on her back, and the prayers of that person were answered accordingly. So we asked Judy Azure to create a small collection of ribbon skirts for us. And these are based on the traditional ceremonial ones that she makes for her family members. But I asked her to specifically make ones that were fashion forward because, again, we have customers from throughout the world, so it's got to be something that can be worn by somebody in Australia or on the Navajo reservation. But it was absolutely critical for me to do this and to share our respect for the power of women with the world. Now, again, I'm not trained in business at all. I'm trained as an academic. I have my PhD, and in true academic form, I decided to analyze why this business was working. What are the keys to our success? Like, it's working, what is going on? So that these are some of the things that I think were key to the success of our business. The first being flexible. I was actually advised to standardize what I do and how I work with artists, and I'm like, it's not gonna work. You don't wanna standardize artists, stop it. So the first is, the first is being flexible. So every time we take on a new artist onto the site, I talk with them and try to figure out, how do they see themselves? What do they see as their goals? What do they want out of this? And try to figure out a system that works for them. The people who I work with, some of them don't even think of themselves as artists. They just do stuff. And the majority of them, there's only a small fraction of them that actually consider themselves as business people, as owning businesses. So I have to figure out where they are on that path and if they want to turn what they do into a full-fledged business, or if they merely just want to stick to being creative in the evening in addition to their day job. It's all different across the board. Everybody has different needs. And also, our artists are our culture bearers. A lot of them are the ones that are active in community events and ceremonies. So that requires me to be flexible with them and to come up with inventive strategies. So when they have to participate in Sundance, which is happening now, that means that we can either temporarily remove their items from the website, or we can continue to sell the items, but just make a note that these are a pre-order, order now and it will ship in a month. Or we'll come up with a system of ordering stuff like a wholesale order ahead of time so that they can continue to earn income this way. But it is constant creative problem solving because we want to keep moving this forward. And I love the idea that Beyond Buckskin isn't going to be stuck in time, that it is going to constantly morph to meet the needs of the artists and the consumers. So the second key is being responsive. Big companies and organizations pay a lot of money to get feedback from customers or consumers, and we just get it for free. There's a lot of people who have been with us from the beginning when it was just a blog, or when we just launched the boutique, or when we just launched the retail store. They've been there with us, and they feel invested in us. They feel part of the Beyond Buckskin family, and so they will just tell us what they think we should do, what we shouldn't do, what we should sell, what we shouldn't sell, where we should go, what should we. It's all this free feedback. Thanks, guys. But not every suggestion is a good suggestion, so I have to kind of weed through that and see what we can incorporate in and try out, and then being responsive. Is it working? Are our customers responding? If they are, then let's reinforce it, let's back it up. If they're not, then let's reel back on it and not put too many resources into it. The next key is this idea of limited edition. All of our products are produced in limited quantities or are one of a kind, and our customers love that. They love the fact that they're getting something completely unique when they wear it out, somebody else isn't going to be wearing it, and that they're actually probably going to get compliments or it's going to be a discussion starter. They love that. And also, we're not just a native business, but we're a fashion business. So we do have to ascribe to some fashion industry standards, and one of them being this idea that there's always new collections being launched. And that's what we do. So every week that you go to the boutique site, you will see new products up there. You will see stuff by new artists and designers. So it's a way for us to constantly feed the website. We will never have a stale website. The next key I called micro what? Because I didn't know I was doing it until somebody told me, and that was giving microloans to artists. I was like, I didn't know that that was a thing, but okay. And so it started off very organically, and it was with Natalie Waldman, who creates these beautiful hide fringe purses. And she was at her supplier for these hides, and she found, I don't know the words for this, but it's this big hide that was beautiful and so soft, and it's a huge piece, which is really rare. And she got me on the phone. Now, here's the thing is I have very close relationships with all of these artists. They will text me at 7 o'clock in the morning. They will call me at 11 o'clock at night. They will email me throughout the day. They feel very comfortable with reaching out to me to toss ideas around or for me to help them problem solve, like this case. And in my head, I could just see her at this supplier with her hand on this hide. Like, Jessica, I need it, I gotta get it. Like, if she took her hand off of it, somebody else was gonna take it. But it cost over $200, and she didn't have that money on her. So, and this is the thing with artists that are starting out is they'll sell something, and then that money goes to making their next thing, and at some point they have to pay their bills. But how do they go into bigger, better materials, more expensive items? So I was like, okay, I could PayPal transfer you $250, and then she was able to take that $250 and PayPal transfer to her supplier and buy this extraordinary material. And she made 2 beautiful purses out of it, and we were able to sell it. And Beyond Buckskin made money, she made money, and we were able to elevate her standing as a native designer of high quality items. And we were able to raise her retail prices slightly. And then the second time it happened, it's just $250 sounds like not a lot to some people, but to some people it is life-changing. It is the world to them. So the second time it happened was with Jared Yazzie, who I showed you with the Native Americans Discovered Columbus t-shirt. He started off as a t-shirt designer. It's t-shirts what he does. But he is so cool and so smart. I wanted him to participate in a fashion show that we were doing, but that meant that he had to create 12 new runway looks. And he, of course, said yes, but he doesn't have the money to buy the raw materials to create 12 new looks. And so I said, okay, well, here's $500, create the collection, and then after the fashion show, either pay me back the $500 or give me $500 in wholesale inventory. And it was great. He did an amazing job. We were able to take great photos from it, and then that elevated him from just a t-shirt guy to an actual designer. And that was an important moment in his career as well. So again, it's only $500, but it means so much to these artists, and they can do so much with it. The second key is being online. I launched this online. I think this is important to say this to this audience because I was, again, I was based out of Phoenix, Arizona. I was teaching there. And then I launched this business. Launching this business allowed me to go back home and to operate this business out of my tiny town. Its population, I think we're at 34 now. Tiny. But I could live a block away from my grandma, 2 blocks away from my mom. And I could bring money into the community. And not just bring money in, but think about how we're going to keep it there, how we're going to recycle those dollars as much as possible. Because that's how you know that you have a strong local economy, is how many times does money get recycled within that community. So being online allowed us to connect the artists with a broader customer base so that they would get more compensation for their work. We were seeing these situations where, especially with quill work, where they had saturated the market, their local market. They couldn't sell any more quill work to people. It was all, people were like, I have 10, 17 bracelets and earrings, I don't need it anymore. So you get this situation where the artists are kind of competing amongst each other, so they're having to lower their prices and increase the quality and creativity and make their work really stand out. So the situation where they're producing extraordinary work for very low prices, and that is just not sustainable. So with this website, we're able to put this work out there and get the proper amount that they deserve. I don't believe in overpricing. I don't believe in underpricing. I believe in creating a sustainable model for artists. The next key has to do with blogging. This Beyond Buckskin started as a blog, as me going blah, blah, blah. And then the secondary offshoot was the business. Now the business is the primary aspect and the blog is secondary. Whenever I'm not writing, the business suffers because we cannot compete on price alone. We cannot compete on just the product alone. We need to share the stories of these items. What goes into making this item? What is it made out of? Who is the person that's making it? What are the designs? What are the colors? Why did they choose this? This all adds tremendous value to what we are selling in the boutique side. Now, the last point is social media. It is a free resource that we should be taking advantage of, and we do. So we're on everything: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, Pinterest, Snapchat, YouTube, and whatever else. You'll find us. And it's a way for us to share our journey. Native American cultural values are in direct alignment with some of the key business trends of 2017. The first being sharing story. That is a key business trend. If you go to websites, people are changing their about me to our story, because that's what people want to know. What is your story? The second has to do with social good. People are wanting to put their money into something that has a positive impact on our lives, that does some social good. And the last has to do with connecting with people. How do we connect? And social media is a way for the average person to connect with their favorite brands, and it increases loyalty and makes them feel like they're a part of something and invested in something. Now here's a short list of our challenges. These are not all of our challenges at all. I was afraid if I wrote all of my challenges on one slide that I'd fall into a deep, dark depression and never come out. So these are some of the challenges. The first has to do with stereotypes. It is something that Native designers have battled since the 1950s at least. People expect Native fashion to have feathers, fringe, and turquoise, and some of it does, and that's great. But you don't have to have those aspects in order for it to be fashion produced by a Native American person. And so with the name of our business, Beyond Buckskin, that's what we're asking people to do, is to allow us to show you what Native fashion can look like when we go beyond buckskin. The second challenge is the cheap knockoffs, which I brought up before, those sold by Forever 21 and Urban Outfitters. We're never gonna, that's always going to be there. There's always gonna be the cheap knockoffs. Knockoffs are going to exist when you're doing something really cool and really neat, and there's a demand for it. So the only way that we can get around it is just being completely separate of it and continuing to tell our stories of what separates us from the cheap mass-produced stuff. The next one has to do with industry constraints. The fashion industry is one of the hardest to break into, regardless of your background. You have to have a lot of money and a lot of connections, and we have neither. So instead, we work together. And by working together, we can share costs, and we can cause a bigger ruckus. So we can show people that there's something really cool and exciting going on. The last challenge is one that I constantly battle. It is thinking about how I can continue to expand beyond buckskin so that we can continue to grow and to continue to grow our impact by employing as many Native American people and artists as possible, but with keeping with our mission. So that is a constant battle and struggle for me. I want to leave you guys with some tips of things that have helped beyond buckskin. The first being story. I must have said the word story a gazillion times tonight, but I know a lot of you guys are artists or work with artists or have organizations. What is your story? We have 4 key stories that our customers and supporters latch onto. The first is just that we're creating a space. It sounds so basic, but this space has never existed before. It's a place where we celebrate and share Native cultures through fashion. And fashion is something that we all engage in. We all get dressed in the morning. And so this is a common meeting ground where we can come together and celebrate our differences. The second has to do with fighting the man. Yes, I'm not afraid to critique Urban Outfitters or Valentino or Paul Frank or Victoria's Secret, any of these companies. We will critique them and we will demand a response. But you can't just critique. You have to offer up some options, some positive options. You can't just say, don't do that. You have to say, what about if you do this? Check this out. So that's what we do. We provide ethical, authentic options instead. The third story is job creation. People talk about it all the time. Well, we got to create jobs. We don't talk about it. We just do it. And we figure out how to do it. And that's what we want to do. We want to provide economic development, especially in our tiny reservation communities. The last is we are a part of this American-made movement and story. This is how Martha Stewart got involved in us. But this idea of shopping local and buying local and creating local, there's nothing more American than the Native American. So I believe... So I believe that we should be included in the American-made movement and be seen as an integral part of that, because some of our artists literally go out into their backyard and find materials that they turn into accessories or jewelry or fashion, which is so extraordinary and amazing. The last has to do with roles and relationships. We have to constantly maintain this. It's all about relationships in Indian country and in small towns and rural communities. And we must constantly nourish those important relationships that will help build and strengthen our communities. The next thing is that I want you all to know that we each have an important gift and an important role to play. Creator made you and made you for a purpose. You have to honor that gift. So just some concluding thoughts. I don't have conclusions. I don't, because for me that makes an assumption that there's an ending, and that's not the case. It's ongoing. So instead, it's more of questions. These are the questions that drive me and move me forward. The first is, how do we keep traditional tribal values, ideas, and language at the forefront of what we're doing? The second is, how do we remain culturally responsive while allowing for technology? Technology is part of our lives. Even in my tiny town of 34, we all have Wi-Fi. The third is, how do we ensure our economic development practices are sustainable, resilient, and regenerative? So those are the questions that move me forward. And I just want to thank you guys again for sitting through and listening to me talk about Beyond Buckskin and my journey with that. And if you have any questions, I don't know if we have time for questions, but I'll be around here if you want to come up and ask me personally. But yes, keep in touch, please. Thank you. More copying, yay! Thank you guys so much. You guys are awesome. Do you want to I don't know if we even have time.
Unfortunately, we don't.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm just going to grab the audience
Okay.
here. Thank you all for a great morning. We are going to get back on schedule. So we're going to start the next breakout sessions as close to 11 as the presenters have time to get set up. Just help each other out. And I know some of the presenters are on schedules, so there's snacks out in the hallway there. Grab some cookies and coffee. Lunch today will be boxed lunches, so if you're hitting the road, you're welcome to grab your lunch and go. But if you do stick around, Bethany Lacterin and her choir are going to do a short little sing out at the end of our lunch reception. And also the Bush Foundation wanted to invite people to join them at a table for lunch, so I believe they have a sign somewhere if you want to learn more about their resources and grants. I think that's all. So we have come to an end, and you're all on your way. So have a wonderful morning, and we will celebrate at lunch. Is this your USB? No. That's somebody else's. Yeah. Okay.